All right, guys, so we just finished up fishing with Billy Lawson out here on Lake Palestine. It's mid-March. The frog bite's really, really good. It's been great for probably a month now. This year, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, you know, so I've been throwing that frog for about a month. But let's talk about what I throw a frog on. I'm not going to say that frogging's my favorite technique, but it's a technique that I really enjoy, and I catch a lot of fish, and I catch some big fish on it. Equipment. I throw my frog on a 7.4 heavy action rod. Now, the rod that I've got here is actually a Falcon rod. It's a Cara, and I use this rod because it's got a little bit of bend to it. I don't know if you guys can see this. Let me try to get some.
See, it's a very wide angle.
It's got a little bit of bend to it, but it stops right there, and so that's the key. I want to have enough tip to where I can get a really, really soft landing. I want to be able to throw that frog right on top of fish, but not make a single ripple in the water. And I also want a little bit of tip so I can twitch it and make it. It's got a unique action that I really like to use, and you got to have a soft tip for that. So I'm throwing a 7.4 heavy action rod, and the frogs that I'm throwing are Spro frogs and Strike King frogs. And this Spro popping frog has been really good. And I know Billy showed it to you, but you guys can kind of see it right there. She's chewed up. This is a frog that I throw a lot. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let the cat out of the bag. My favorite frog is Old Red. And we always sing Old Red was the dangest frog I'd ever seen. And this is just natural red's the name of the color. And you can see this one. This is just a regular frog. It's not a popping frog. But what I do is I trim one leg a little bit shorter than the other. That's what most people, when they frog fish, they kind of already know this. And then I bend the hooks out. And so that's pretty important.
What's the point of the one leg shorter than the other?
When I make one leg shorter than the other, it allows the frog to walk a little bit better. And so, plus Dean Rojas does that. I throw white a lot. I'm going to start throwing the white a little bit more. I'll throw white through April. The end of March into April, I'll start throwing white, and then I'll go back to that red. Now, that red's a big deal because the crawfish will start getting in the grass. It'll get on the gator grass. They'll get in the hydrilla, coontail, hyacinth, any kind of grass like that. The little bitty crawfish will get up there. The way to know that the crawfish are up there is the clicking. So if you're familiar with fishing around grass, this time of year you'll start hearing, it almost sounds like Rice Krispies in the water. Those are little bitty crawfish, and they're just kind of slapping their tails through that grass, and that red becomes a really big deal. As far as reels go, I throw a Shimano Metanium. It's a high-end reel, but it's also a good reel. This is a 8.5-to-1, and it's an MGL, which it allows me to put a little bit more line. I'm throwing 65-pound braid. Braid is a must, folks. Listen, if you're somebody that's new to frog fishing and you're really wanting to learn, if I can give you one piece of advice, you have to throw it on braid. It has a lot to do with the action, but it also has a lot to do with the hook sets and where you're going to throw your frog. We're going to talk about the retrieve, but one thing I want to tell everybody is when you're throwing this frog, especially if you're not from East Texas and the spawn's just starting up, don't stop it when you get to the end of the cover. If you're throwing it in gator grass or reeds or hyacinth or anything, walk it out another 5 to 10 foot, because those bass will tend to spawn on the edge of that stuff a little bit, and you want to kind of get this frog on top of those beds and splash it around and see if you can't get one of those fish to react to it.
Talk about the areas you look for. How do you decide where you're going to fish a frog?
So let's talk about the areas. I pull into an area. I'm going to be in a creek. I'm looking for cover, and when I say cover, I'm talking about any kind of cover, whether it's coontail grass, whether it's milfoil, hydrilla, hyacinth, willows. I'll skip willows. anything like that that the bass have the ability to hide in. You want something that they can get under, that you can cause them to react to that frog and for them to come up. So I'm looking for anything on the bank, any kind of cover that those bass will hide in. I key in on the little points that the grass makes, or the little dips in the grass. Any irregularity in the grass is what I want. And then the fish are going to tell you where they're at in that grass. So you might be on miles and miles and miles of gator grass, and you got to kind of dissect that stuff. And so you got to figure out where they're at. They're either going to be in the front of it, or the back of it, or in the middle of it. They're going to be in a specific part of that grass. And I think today, Billy and I found a lot of those fish were kind of in the back of that gator grass. Now this morning they were kind of chasing the shad, and they were out in the coontail grass. But as the day went on, we kind of found out that most of these fish were way towards the back of this gator grass. And so that was a pattern he and I could run with, and it eliminated some of the areas we had to fish. So if I've got 2 miles of grass and the grass is coming 60 foot off the bank, I don't have to sit there and throw my frog all the way to the bank and fish it all the way to the edge of the grass once I kind of figure out where those fish are at. Now what you don't want to get caught up on is you don't want to go, okay, well, maybe I caught one here and I caught one there. Figure out a pattern. Figure out where the fish are at, where the majority of the activity is, and fish that area and ignore the rest of it. You just kill too much time trying to catch every single fish, man. If we go through a stretch of bank and catch 10 fish, we probably caught 10 of 200, who knows. But it doesn't matter. You catch the fish that you can catch, and you put a pattern together and you run with it. There's a couple different retrieves I use. My favorite is what I don't really, it's just a twitch and pause. And so if you can catch this on video, I'll kind of throw it out there. Can you see that?
Okay.
All right. And what I'll do is I twitch in the slack. I'm not actually, what a lot of people do is they'll do this, and they're pulling the bait with the rod. What I want to do is I want to get a good amount of slack in my bait and use that bait and make that bait spit and sputter. And I think irregularity is the key to this deal. So you want to mimic a shad that's trying to get away, and you want to make the thing go side to side. And every once in a while, I'll get it tight and I'll do that. And that's just a chugging sound. If I have one that blows up on it or one that swirls on it, what I'll do is I'll do a quick walk and walk that frog away from him, stop it, and one big splash. And that usually will get the bites. Now, on the regular frog, what I'll do a lot of times, especially if I'm trying to cover water and I haven't really figured out where they're at, I'll just walk it, just like I would a spook. I'll just do a steady walk with that frog. And what I do a little bit different than I do with maybe a Zara spook or a Sammy is I'll pause the frog in my walk. But one thing that's really important on a frog is to remember to turn that frog around and make it look at that fish. So you want to make that sucker turn all the way around and look back. If you can see the nose, it's turning all the way backwards. One thing that I really like to do, and I think this is key to getting the reaction strike, is I take the rod, the butt of the rod, and I slap it against my forearm. And what that does is it allows me to twitch that bait and make that frog not move. So that frog will splash, but it stays where it's at. And so I do it just like this. And if you watch that frog will turn all the way around. Guys, first of all, I want to thank you for watching the Guides Network. Billy Lawson, appreciate you having me out. Thanks for coming out to Lake Palestine. You guys, if you like this, hit the thumbs up. If you love it, subscribe. Follow my boy Billy. He's got a lot of great information. He's got some of the top fishermen in East Texas, really in the country, jumping in the boat with him and showing them how to on some of the toughest lakes and some of the best fisheries in the country. So go on there and follow Billy, and we'll see you next time.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Your Lake Fork Guide. I'm here again. Well, as you can probably tell, it's not really again. We're doing several different topics today.
At least you're the most honest guy that ever got the camera out.
We built this channel on honest and more true information than any fishing show in the history of fishing.
That's true.
It's true. It's the same day, but I'm still here. But we're going to talk about a few different topics. You guys will see a few different videos with Joe throughout the spring, maybe even into summer if we can get. I think we can find enough to talk about.
Oh,
me and you don't ever. Not a problem.
We haven't run out of anything yet.
Never a problem for me and him to sit here and talk for a long time. So we're going to talk about several different topics. Get them all on camera for you guys. This is number 2. You guys have already seen the flutter spoon video about kind of the history of. So today I asked Joe when we were sitting here at the end of that one, hey, would you mind doing a how-to instructional? So you want to learn how to fish a flutter spoon? You can go learn it from a pro. You can even go learn it. Maybe Kelly Jordan would tell you how to fish it. He's pretty good with it, right?
Kelly's good.
But I'll tell you what we're going to do right here on Your Lake Fork Guide. The man that invented it is going to tell you how to fish the dadgum flutter spoon. If that ain't cool, I'm about to get out of this shot, and I'm going to sit back and turn the mirrors off.
Okay.
Take it away, Joe.
All righty. Well, the first thing people ask me is, do you use braided line on this? My answer is absolutely not. The first thing you'll do is lose every fish you try to hook. My recommendation is that you fish this with a medium to a medium heavy rod. 7-footer is good because you don't really cast the bait; you launch the bait. It's a heavy spoon, weighs an ounce, and it's kind of hard to cast, so you launch the bait, more like a Carolina rig. And I recommend that you fish 15 to 17 pound monofilament, and there's a reason for that. The bait, you fish this bait on free line, on slack line. You do not stay with this bait. You cast it out as far as you can, leave your spool open so it'll take line off of your spool as it's fluttering down, and you just let it flutter all the way to the bottom. When it hits the bottom and your line drops out, then you point your rod at it and reel up your slack. And then you usually start out with short hops, maybe a 1 foot, 2 foot hop lifted up. But each time you lift that up, drop your rod tip back to the water and give it slack. You fish this spoon on slack line.
It's always falling on slack.
Always falling on slack. If the fish aren't holding close to the bottom, if you find the fish are suspended some, you want to raise and increase your pendulum of your rod. Lifting it up, a lot of times I'll bring it up until my rod's straight up in the air, and then I'll drop my rod tip right to the water. And what it does is the spoon actually falls on the back side. When you're pulling it, it'll swim up, and then as soon as you give it slack, because of the design of the spoon, it'll actually back up and then flutter to the bottom. And that's what gets the fish's attention. They're watching the flash. What they're eating is that right there, is that mylar treble. When that hits the bottom, then reel up your slack. The fish may hit it 5, 6 times before they ever take it. Do not set the hook. That's the hardest part to fishing a spoon. Is as soon as you feel a bite, you want to jerk. Do not jerk. Wait till because that's a big bait. The fish is trying to kill it. And when he decides that he can take it now, he'll pick it up, and a lot of times you won't even feel him take the bait. He'll just he'll suck it up, and he'll start swimming with it. As soon as he loads your rod up, and there's your reason for using a medium to a medium heavy rod. As soon as he loads your rod up, sweep it. Do not snap set the hook. If you snap set, you'll probably pull the bait away from the fish. If you sweep it, he's already swimming off with it. He'll set the hook himself. The second thing to remember is braided line has no stretch. And so if you set the hook, you're probably going to pull it right away from it. With monofilament, you have some stretch. The fish will have a tendency to stay down if it feels like he's got his head. You want to keep that fish down for a while. Don't fight that fish to the top. That's a lot of weight. And if that fish comes up and gets his head out of water, he's going to throw that spoon. So what you want to do is you want to play that fish. You go in for the fight and the bite anyway. So enjoy it, and keep him down there. As long as you keep your rod bent, with a wider rod you can do that. Keep your rod bent and don't force him. Pretty soon he'll wear out. The fish won't last too long, and you pull him right up. He'll come up and you can just freehand him. You can just reach down and take him by the jaw.
Turn over on the side, just lay there and look at you.
And that's pretty much the lesson on fishing the flutter spoon.
The biggest thing is, set your gear up and hook set to where you don't take the bait away from the fish.
That's correct.
With all that weight and all that mass on that spoon, it's easy to take that that spoon away from them.
That's exactly right.
So
and
make sure that you're taking your time and you just kind of sweep set like
Yep.
you said, and set your gear up between the mono and the lighter action rod, a medium heavy to
Right.
medium action rod, so that gives them shock absorption, so you don't rip that bait out of their mouth.
It's very important that you don't get into tournament fishing mode like the pros do. Remember, they're catching the biggest fish they can on the lake that they're on, and typically they're 3, maybe 4 pound fish. Every once in a while you'll see them catching a 6 or 8, 9, 10 pound fish, but you're not going to skim a big fish across the water like the pros do on the movies. We watch all the pros and they're cranking just as fast as they can, and what they're doing is they're trying to keep that fish from jumping. You get a 8 or 10 pound bass, you're not going to keep that fish from thrashing. You don't have enough power to do that. You can't jerk them down. So my advice is wear them out, then
Well,
bring
most
them
of the
up.
time, we're fishing this in open water.
That's right.
So it's not like you're fishing around a bunch of heavy standing timber or a bunch of heavy grass. You can't fish that bait in that type of cover.
That's
So
it.
most of the areas are open water. So there's no reason to rush
Well,
it.
I have some guys that will argue with you because they do fish that bait in the timber, and I sell them a lot of bait.
You sell them a lot of baits, and you love them.
Yeah.
Right. Most people, myself included, I'm looking at road beds,
Right.
the top side of a pond dam,
Right.
if it's in the right depth, long extended points that are kind of a bald flat spot. That's the kind of areas that I like to fish it in, and so I have time. It's not like I got to worry about that fish wrapping.
That's right. That typically they're in deeper water. I rarely ever fish the spoon less than 15 foot deep. Usually, my favorite preference is 25 to 35 feet. I catch a lot of fish there, a lot of good fish there.
That's actually a perfect segue, Joe. If you don't mind, why don't you go into kind of a detailed version of exactly what you look for? What do you look for as far as topography? Areas of the lake that you look for, and then what do you look for as far as when you're using your electronics? How do you want those fish set up? What do you want to see on your graph?
Well, typically, when I go out, I'm looking for the bait fish. I'm looking for the fish that those big fish are eating. I'm looking for crappie, yellow bass, sand bass, perch, and if I can find a group of those, it's a perfect place. That's the dinner table to these big fish. And so what I usually do, big fish like to set up outside the perimeter of those smaller fish. And usually they'll be a foot or two deeper. They don't want to run up there and break up their dinner table, so they'll sit out there and wait for a stray to come around. Well, I try to make that spoon be the stray that's getting out there where those big fish are laying waiting. And a lot of times I'll just broadcast around where I'm marking those smaller fish. I really look for break lines. If I can find a 1 or 2 foot drop break, those fish will usually relate to that because it's the only cover they've got typically out on those points. The points are usually don't have the timber, don't have the cover, so they're going to relate to that break line. They're going to get right on the edge of that break line, and that's what I'm looking for.
So you like an extended point with a flat spot with just some breaks on the
Right,
sides,
with
and that's
some breaks on the
so
side.
we're looking for kind of just a long extended flat area in a 15 to 25 foot depth range. Is that right?
Right.
And then you just want to see some little breaks on the sides of it,
Yeah.
where those fish can kind of set up to ambush as those bait fish scatter.
Most of the time, I'll set high on that and throw low.
So you like to throw to deep and bring it back up.
Most of the time. Now, every once in a while,
That's different. I didn't
you
know that.
find
That's
out
pretty
that these fish will relate to a bait coming down or coming across. I did an experiment one day with trolling the flutter spoon, and I had 3 people in the boat, and we all threw out behind the boat, and I was just watching the break line, and every time I would come off the break, I would tell these guys, get ready. We'd come off that break line, and all 3 of us would catch a fish. And so that right there told me that these fish are relating to that break line. You know, I do the same thing when I'm crappie fishing. You know, any fishing, fish have a tendency to relate to break line. And if you're losing your structure, you don't have grass, break's about the only thing they've got to relate to. But they're going to be out there. If the bait's out there, they're going to be out there. And so I kind of follow them. I don't follow the threadfin shad very much, because typically that's not a big meal for bass.
Well, and maybe there are big bass that eat threadfin shad, but a bass that's eating a threadfin shad is not going to be keyed in on something the size of that spoon.
That's right. And so I'm looking for something that's eating a 3/4 or 1 pound crappie, or a yellow bass, or
big pound and a half gizzard shad.
Yeah, gizzard shad. That that we'd like to even catch one of those because they're so big. but that's what I try to key to. I don't go out and just throw the spoon all day. I've watched people do that. That's a lot of work. I'm an old man. I can't do that all day. So I have to get a little smarter about the whole issue and try to relate to what a big fish is looking for that day. And what he's looking for is he's looking for a good meal. He doesn't want to chase a whole lot. And so he'll lay out there and wait until something swims by him. So that's kind of my synopsis of how I fish the flutter spoon.
That's it. If you can't get excited about learning how to fish a flutter spoon from Joe Dadgo Spates, I don't know what you can. That's awesome. Hey, I even learned a couple new things from you, and I've talked to you for hours and hours on end about how to fish a flutter spoon.
I can't tell you everything I know all at once.
Why are you going to tell them then? I've known you longer than they have.
That's all right. We'll get to know each other.
Man, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're the man again. We're going to shake hands a lot today because that's how we're doing things. Again, thank you guys for watching Your Lake Fork Guide. We really appreciate it. Appreciate everything y'all do to help us grow this channel. You guys know what we're about. Honest, in-depth, detailed instructional content, and fun fish catching footage. If you like that, hit that thumbs up for me. If you want to see some more of that, subscribe for me. And we appreciate you guys watching as always. Tell all your friends. Let's grow this channel, make it the biggest fishing channel on YouTube someday. We got high aspirations. High aspirations. It doesn't have to be the biggest on YouTube, but we just want everybody that wants a part of this to get involved. So tell all your buddies, and we'll see you guys next time right here on Your Lake Fork Guide.